Welcome everyone to the Council meeting for the 9th of March 2021, which I now declare open. Although members of the public can't join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to all those of you who are watching online. We apologise for the late start. Tonight we are running a hybrid model, so we have councillors in the chamber and a councillor on Zoom, so all 9 councillors are still participating in tonight's meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Item 3, apologies and leave of absence. And councillors, I have not received any apologies for tonight's meeting. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meetings held on Tuesday the 23rd of February 2021 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 5, declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor. I must declare a material conflict of interest on item 10.1. Furthermore, as there may be questions pertaining to this application during public question time, I think it is prudent to declare a conflict of interest on item 8.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Does any other councillor have a conflict of interest this evening? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd just like to explain that I was the lead petitioner for 2 petitions in item 10.8. But due to the exemption based on interest in common under the Local Government Act and the number of petitions and motions that is the subject matter of the council report, I don't consider that I have a conflict of interest, and as it is not a matter of administrative law, I don't believe I have any apprehension of bias.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any other councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? If no, we move to item 6, presentations. And before I ask if there is any presentations, I'd like to acknowledge that Monday was International Women's Day. Now, International Women's Day sees a number of missions to help forge a gender equal world, celebrating women's achievements and increasing visibility while calling out inequality is the key theme. And this year, they are running with the hashtag Choose to Challenge. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change, so let's all choose to challenge. Councillors, do we have any other presentations this evening? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a verbal presentation to acknowledge that on Friday the 26th of February, the Essendon Rotary Club held their fundraiser called A Fresh Start 2021 here in the civic area at Council. It was really wonderful to host the fundraiser here. It had been delayed by just over a year, I think, with 2 reschedulings due to COVID restrictions. The club was raising money for a number of Rotary projects as well as for bushfire-affected communities in Gippsland. And the event raised just over $10,000, which is a really wonderful achievement. So I just wanted to thank the Rotary Club, the President David Abbey and the hardworking committee members for their efforts and for all the work that they do to support the community. And I hope we can see more events hosted here in the civic area over the year.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do we have any other presentations from councillors? If not, we'll move to item 7, petitions and joint letters. And councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters being tabled tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a petition from the
Councillor
residents of East Keilor. Would you like me to read it out?
Very much so, please.
Thank you. We, the residents of 13 to 19 and 14 to 18 Grove Street, seek that the business of St George's Family Clinical Practice comply with their car parking obligations as prescribed by the planning permit for that business and residence location. The majority of patients attending the St George's Family Practice are not only parking in the allocated on-site areas, but instead preferring to park in Grove Street near the intersection of Miliara Road and Grove Street, thus resulting in a number of safety hazards. Cars turning from Miliara Road into Grove Street and vice versa are impeded by entering Grove Street safely due to the cars parked on both sides. The dual roadway is impeded, not allowing motor vehicles to travel safely in either direction along Grove Street without the need to cross over into the other lane. Residents cannot exit their residence safely as motor vehicles are parked across their driveways. Directly opposite driveways impeding exiting from their own driveways, adjacent to driveways, causing residents' cars to have the need to cross into the other lane to turn left or right from their homes. So we, the residents of Grove Street, are seeking for council to rectify this situation.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Do you have a motion there now to move to receive the petition?
What would you like me to do, Mr Mayor?
Move a motion just to accept the petition.
Yeah, happy to move a motion to accept the
petition. A seconder for that motion? Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you.
As I'm impeded to walk over to you, I will just pass it along the
down.
table.
Lovely, thank you. So we now move to item 8, public question time, and note Councillor Bedio did declare a conflict, so we'll wait for him to leave the chambers. So we now come to public question time, and we have received 9 questions from members of the community for tonight's meeting. As we do not have residents in the public gallery tonight, I propose that we move to suspend the provisions in our governance rules requiring questioners to be present in the gallery. That will enable me to read the questions that have been submitted in advance and for the CEO to read the responses. So, councillors, may I please have a mover that council resolves to wait for the preamble. The mover that council resolves to temporarily suspend the public question provisions in its governance rules to allow questions from the gallery to be read by the Mayor and responses read out by the CEO for this meeting. Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Tyson. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Apologies, Councillor Byrne. I think you're on a 1-second lag, so I only saw your hand go up late. So, all the questions received for tonight's meeting relates to a planning application at 448 to 466 Mount Alexander Road, Ascot Vale. This is item 10.1 on tonight's agenda. So the first question is from Kerry Dowsley, who asks, and again I'll be reading the words of the question asker. Kerry asks, given that we have had our residential amenities significantly impacted by the operation of the Ascot lot, how will Council guarantee that our amenity will be protected in the context of this application? I'll pass to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond to Kerry's question.
Thank you, Kerry. Through the Mayor, Council officers in the recommendation to Council propose to include additional conditions, including a requirement for an acoustic report to review acoustic treatment of the boundary fence and shipping container barrier, and limitations on the playing of amplified music throughout the site to address potentially increased amenity impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The second question also comes from Kerry Dowsley. Kerry asks, what would councillors do if they were in our situation with music and patron noise being heard inside their houses and in their outdoor areas each weekend? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Kerry. Through the Mayor, the application has been assessed against the relevant provisions of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, and officers have considered the objections raised as a result of notice of the application. As stated in the response to your first question, Council officers in the recommendation to Council propose to include additional conditions to address potentially increased amenity impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The third question comes from Graham Twist. Graham asks, does Council appreciate that a significant factor in the noise issue is to do with the tin shed on the laneway in brackets Zone B, and that having music and patron noise emanating from the largely uninsulated structure until 11 p.m. will concentrate this noise at the closest point to residences? I'll again pass to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Graham. Through the Mayor, the existing building undercover seating 2, Zone B, incorporates insulating foam to the interior of the building to dampen noise emissions. Additionally, a condition has been recommended to close the roller door to the smoking area to limit noise emitted from the opening. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions come from Mark Curtis. Mark's first question reads, given our amenity is already being impacted considerably with a much reduced patron capacity than what is being proposed, what measure does Council pose to introduce on the venue that will not further impact our amenity should it decide in the affirmative, because noise levels and other issues raised, such as parking, litter and patron behaviour when leaving the venue, will be significantly more than what is being omitted at present? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Mark. Through the Mayor, officers have considered the amenity impacts on the adjoining residential properties. As stated in my response to other questions received, Council officers recommended a number of conditions to address additional amenity impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Mark's second question reads, has any councillor inspected the site in an official capacity whilst trading to understand and witness firsthand the impact this venue has on residents? And if so, what evidence of their findings, open brackets, includes dates/times, close brackets, were recorded? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the officer report includes assessment of all aspects relevant to the application and makes recommendations and proposed conditions relevant to the assessment. Council laws, being the decision makers on this application, as part of the due diligence, make additional inquiries as they deem fit.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions come from Teresa Alam. Teresa's first question reads, could Council please outline the process for identifying and managing conflict of interest that councillors have in general and specifically as they relate to this application? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Teresa. Through the Mayor, under the Local Government Act 2020, is a matter for each individual councillor to determine whether they have a conflict of interest in any matter which is presented to Council for decision. Councillors who have declared a conflict of interest in a matter before Council are required to leave the Council chamber when discussing and deciding on the item. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Teresa's second question reads, based on the historical/existing experiences and fines, how does Council take this into consideration when making a decision around this application? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, Council officers have taken into account the history of this site, including the enforcement history as required under Clause 13.07-1L of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Discussion on this clause is at Section 3.1 and 3.2 of the Officer Report. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next question comes from David and Nellie Harbord, who ask, we would like to know how 2 food trucks constitute a restaurant, brackets, for up to 350 people, particularly given that the focus of the Ascot lot as per the submission to Council is, quotes, alcohol and events. I will now pass to the CEO again, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, David and Lily. Through the Mayor, The existing permit allows in combination the operation as a food and drink premises, including the serving of liquor. The application seeks approval to amend the permit preamble, increase hours of operation, increase patron numbers and associated buildings and works, and does not contemplate precise changes to the way the food is to be served. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The final question for this evening comes from Roy Tascone, who asks, with the proposed increase in patron numbers, I am concerned that the noise level will be increased, creating a further hardship on residents who are already affected by noise levels, open brackets, limiting use of private outdoor areas, close brackets. What measures will be put in place, including building standards, to manage noise levels? I'll again pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Roy. Through the Mayor, officers in the assessment regard the proposed increase in patron numbers to be acceptable in this situation, as is reflective of the overall scale and area of the use being consistent with similar land uses within the surrounding area, including the Nora Hotel. The amenity impacts on the adjoining residential properties have been considered, and from the assessment, council officers recommend a number of conditions to address additional amenity impacts. As mentioned in my response to previous questions, in general, these recommendations include a requirement for an acoustic report, and any installation of measures from the acoustic report would have to comply with building regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and we thank the public for their questions. Could we please get Councillor Bedio back to the chambers? We now move to item 9, being reports from delegated committees, and we have none for tonight, so we will move straight to council reports. We move to item 10.1, and Councillor Bedio has declared a conflict of interest, so he will now leave the chambers. Reports 10.1 on tonight's agenda is 448 to 466 Mount Alexander Road, Ascot Vale. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendations.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Adams. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
So I think a lot of it was covered in public question time, but it's an application for an amendment to the Ascot lot. Thanks to the community members who have reached out regarding this application. I hope a lot of them have been resolved through the officer's report, but as I understand it, there's several amendments that may be introduced, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, if I may.
Yes, if you could please present your amendment.
I'd like to move that to amend the permit preamble to read buildings and works and sale and consumption of liquor in association with a restaurant and bar in a design and development overlay Schedule 3.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Please just bear with me while I make a note. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak solely on your amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. This application was proposed by the applicant as a restaurant and bar, and it was advertised as a restaurant and bar. And I think that given the applicant has requested that it be a restaurant and bar and that it's been advertised as such, that it is appropriate to maintain that nomenclature of restaurant and bar. I understand that the officer's recommendation is essentially that it makes no difference whether it's called a restaurant and bar, because the nature of the permits in a commercial one zone are such that the land use may be used as a restaurant, may be used as a bar, and that that is the allowable use within a commercial one zone. I think, however, that the description of the land as restaurant is really important to, as we've heard from residents, important to the way the land is used. It has been a much loved by many people food truck park, and it's that combination of food and having a drink that have actually given it the attraction and the provided that degree of sort of destination for people. We had the privy, or we've been privy, in fact, to a sort of a preliminary VCGLR determination on this site, which is a bit unusual that should reach us earlier than our council decision, as the VCGLR permit is contingent on the council decision. But nonetheless, at paragraph 28 of that particular determination, there was reference to the fact that this had been applied for as a restaurant and bar, and that was part of the reasoning of the commissioner in determining, in making its determination that it's not a nightclub, it's not an application for a nightclub, it's not an application for a rowdy facility. It is in fact an application for a restaurant, and the expectation there is that it has 75% of patrons being able to be seated and being able to enjoy a bite to eat as well as a drink, and that does have flow-on impacts for the amenity concerns, many of which we've heard raised tonight. So the logic being that if it doesn't make any particular difference from the planning department's enforcement point of view as to whether it's a restaurant and bar, I think there's no real need to change it, and we can honour the applicant, the VCGLR, and the advertising that took place and just leave it as restaurant and bar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it brief. As Councillor Isa's outlined, there's not a lot of practical implication on this one. It just goes to what the expectation is in the community and from the business, the applicant. The original application, as Councillor Isa said restaurant and bar. The planning department has explained to us that there's not much of a outcome, given that the definition of bar includes service of food, so the officer's recommendation still allows for the service of food in the venue, but in line with the advertising and the outcome of the VCGLR liquor licensing, that has all been assessed under the assumption that the application was for restaurant and bar.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? If not, I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That is unanimously carried. That becomes a substantive motion. I will just, for the purpose of Councillor Byrne being on the Zoom, even with unanimous votes, I will just read out all names just to ensure that the experience is the same in chambers and on the screen. We're now looking for another speaker on the substantive motion.
Mayor,
Councillor Isa.
may I move a second amendment?
Okay, all right. A second amendment. What would your second amendment be?
I'd like to move to amend condition 5 to read no more than 250 patrons may be on site at any one time.
So the amendment is to amend condition 5 to read no more than 250 patrons may be on site at any one time. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Mayor, I'm happy to second for the purpose of debate.
Seconded Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to this specific amendment?
I'll speak as efficiently as I can, Mayor. The application is for 350, an increase from 150 to 350 people on site. Generally, the VCGLR guidelines indicate that allowance needs to be made for 0.75 square metres for the internal space for all patrons, and that's the way that the maximum capacity of patrons is generally calculated. Now, this particular site has an internal shed which is truly internal, but then there's another area that has 3 walls which is semi-internal, and the idea of the maximum cap under the VCGLR guidelines, and that's a general guideline, is that should there be a sudden downpour, as we do know happens in Melbourne, should there be a particular entertainment that everybody on the precinct suddenly wants to participate in, should there be some reason that all patrons on the site wish to suddenly be indoors, that the site needs to be able to accommodate that. And so in moving for 250, my understanding would be that the shed itself probably allows for 200, so it's not allowing for everyone to be inside the shed, but given that there is this other space and that it's a general guideline, and that space could then accommodate the overflow of the 50, that's where I've arrived at 250. If the cap is at 350, not all people will be able to be inside the shed. And if all 350 people tried to make their way inside the shed, it would be a safety risk. And if there were more than 350 people in the shed for any one reason and they were trying to get out of the shed, that would be a safety risk. So I appreciate that the owner wants to invite more people on, and I think that 250 is a compromise between that 150 and 350, and is also calculated per the guidelines as I've explained.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Look, I would just say that the officer's report outlines, the size of the site, etc. I think Councillor Isa raised some important points around what happens in the event that people need to get undercover, noting that, as an outdoor venue, it often will be less patroned on wet days. But I would just say that I think the officer's recommendation also requires the business to address the noise that comes from patron as well, and that is all pretty heavily conditioned. And I think in the interests of trying to reach a mediated outcome between objectors and the applicants, it's important that we consider points that might bring them closer to an agreement. But I'm not sure about this one.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? If not, as I consider that to be dissent, Councillor Isa, would you like to close? I'll put that specific amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Isa. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That amendment is lost. Returning to the substantive motion, so far I've had the mover, Councillor Tyson, speak, the seconder, Councillor Adams, speak. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, if I could, please.
Councillor Hodgson, please provide us with your amendment.
I'd like to make a small amendment to the officer's recommendation that condition 4 to read, the use The use authorised by this permit may only operate between the hours of A, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and B, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, C, 12 noon to 11 p.m. on Anzac Day, and D, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on the eve of and day of public holidays.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I will just get a thumbs up from Councillor Byrne. Obviously, there's quite a few amendments. You're following this amendment. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this amendment? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. And I suppose I haven't really spoken on the substantive motion yet, but my amendment here does go to my views on that. And I think it's very important that we are able to strike a balance between supporting businesses in Moonee Valley and supporting a nighttime economy, but also protecting our residents from unreasonable amenity impacts. And this is a very unique site. It's both in what it offers and brings to Moonee Valley, and also in the impact that it has as largely an outdoor venue. So in moving this amendment, I'm seeking to find a balance between those two competing interests. I think the officer's recommendation's gone a long way to addressing some of the concerns, in particular the noise, but I believe that this operating hours of operating until late, 4 nights a week, on peak, I suppose, common nights out for people, but operating still, it allows a dinner service to be in line with how we've voted on the restaurant and bar question. It allows dinner service 7 nights a week, but closing at 9 on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, just as a sign that, you know, we consider that commercial 1 properties, particularly outdoor, if this had been a beer garden, we might consider that a hotel would need to close the beer garden a bit earlier on some nights. In the absence of being able to make that kind of a condition, I hope that this will strike a balance so that the residential zone that's adjoining the commercial zone is being respected, and we have we've struck a balance between supporting the business to operate as a food and drink venue, but also recognising the right of the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Only to briefly say that I support the amendment as a way of giving some relief to the very proximate neighbours from that late night. Effectively every night of the year was the application, and so this does provide some relief from that.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? If not, I'll put this amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek. Those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson. That is carried. That amendment then helps form the substantive motion. At this stage, Councillor Tyson is the mover and Councillor Adams is seconder, the two that have spoken. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move a further amendment, if I may.
Please provide the amendment.
I'd like to move that condition 15 be amended to read that only background music is to be played after 9 p.m. in all internal areas, with all background music to cease at 10 p.m.
So the amendment is for condition 15 to read only background music is to be played after 9 p.m. in all internal areas, with all background music to cease at 10 p.m. Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Mayor, I'm happy to second for the purpose of debate.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. As an application for a licensed premises, the key section of the planning scheme that really goes to our decision making here is clause 1307 1L, and the objective of this particular policy is to minimise negative impacts associated with licensed premises. And this condition actually has come from the police to whom this application was referred, who have required that background music only be played after 9 p.m. in internal areas as a way of minimising negative impacts associated with this particular licensed premises. Now, this particular site has two internal areas, or two areas that are classified as internal. One is the shed at the rear, and the other area is a three-walled undercover seating area towards the front. Now, in talking to residents, and we will have heard from the questions that were raised tonight, somewhat counterintuitively, it is in fact the shed that raises greatest concern with respect to noise for residents. And I guess that's understandable because it is the most proximate area, but it's also by nature of the construction material of the shed. It's a tin shed that has undergone some acoustic treatment, but there is still some reverberation and noise that seems to be amplified just by the nature of the built form. So running the background music in that particular area until 11 p.m. Actually, as I say, a little bit counterintuitively, although it's the most internal area, it's actually the area that is closest to the residents. And the residents have really expressed a desire for music in that area to be reduced after 10 p.m, to cease after 10 p.m, in the hope that any remaining patrons on the site might actually move to the front of the premises. The clause 1307 does talk about designing venues to minimise that conflict with adjoining land use, and specifically locating active areas, including music performance areas and speakers, away from sensitive uses. So ideally, the front of the site would be the place where there is that most active and on the later noise. So in putting forward the 10 p.m. suggestion, I mean, look, ideally it might be that the shed might stop at 10 p.m. and then music could continue at the front of the site until a later time. The condition from the police does allow for that. So there is potential for further discussion around this, and potentially that can be a point of discussion at the VCAT hearing or the VCAT conference this Thursday. But I think it is really important that all councillors do understand that it is the shed that is the most problematic. It's the most sensitive interface, and running the music from there till 11 o'clock is quite problematic, given that it's not built for specific purpose of having late night music.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's really important to note that a lot of these amendments are seeking to find where we might be able to bring the parties together. And on this one, I think that there's a lot of conditions elsewhere in the report, particularly around acoustic treatment, that may go some way to also address the concern that residents have with that shed. With that in mind, I suppose I'll draw attention to conditions 8 and 9, which indicate the noise levels that the use must at all times comply with, and the condition 17, that an acoustic report be submitted that will be approved by the responsible authority and will detail appropriate acoustic fence to be erected in places. So it basically goes to address some of the existing concerns with the use around noise emanating from that back boundary. To that end, I think given the Vic Police have given their approval based on specific conditions being entered, I certainly appreciate where the residents are coming from. I think the background music being played after 9 p.m. in internal areas is probably adequate to address the amenity concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this amendment? As I consider there to be dissent, Councillor Isa, would you like to close?
Only just to say that one of the things that we haven't quite had some clarity on, and I'm hoping that clarity can be sought at VCAT around these two issues as to what what actually constitutes background music and whether there's a set decibel level for that, and it would be good if that could be further explored so that there aren't ongoing enforcement issues around that, and also what the meaning of non-amplified instruments is, and they're perhaps areas for further clarification at VCAT.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll put this specific amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Isa, Councillor Sypek. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. That amendment is lost. We return to the substantive motion, and again, at this stage, I've had Councillor Tyson as mover and Councillor Adams as seconder speak. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move another amendment, if I may.
Your amendment, please.
I'd like to amend condition 16 to read, the smoking area located along the rear boundary to be relocated with the red line area to be removed from this area and the roller door access to be closed at all times during the operation of the use.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Sorry, I might just get the vacuum cleaner to turn off in the background. That might help. Sorry, do I have a seconder for this amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Byrne, you're across this current amendment on the Zoom. Excellent. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to this amendment?
So I do thank the officers for recognising that the location of the smoking area is particularly problematic for the sensitive interface use of residents, in that the smoking area had been located right on the laneway there, and that has caused residents concern to have loud noise emanating from that particular position and along the fence there. So the officer's recommendation is to relocate the smoking area. It then does just leave open the question as to what activity may occur in that area that's then left not being a smoking area. The roller door needs to be closed, and it may well be that the applicant changes some orientation of some fencing to open up that area. And if that area were opened up again, the problems of noise would then just continue. And again, I refer to the planning scheme, clause 13.071L, that again refers to locating these active areas away from sensitive uses, minimising the impact of noise on the premises and discouraging outdoor areas, including smoking areas, in residential zones. So our planning scheme is really sensitive about that interface, and this particular amendment is just reinforcing that there's an intention to make sure noise is again towards the front of the site in that big, quite expansive and area that's undergone some really nice renovations recently. People move around there, and in that way that minimises the impact on residents, and that's the intention of our planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quickly to say, I think this is another case where the amendment is seeking to just reinforce the council officer's recommendation and intention there. As Councillor Isa's outlined, the smoking area would not otherwise be, on the current plans, is not otherwise accessible once that roller door is closed. But to be really specific about the intention there, it's to move people away from the the back wall there. I note as well there's an additional condition in the officer's recommendation to provide bike car parking. That's something maybe the applicant could consider using that space for, but it's certainly not for me to tell them what to do.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to support this motion. Just like in any other restaurant or any other facility that you walk into, if you are going to smoke, it's usually you walk out the front and it's either on the footpath or down in the park, not out the back. Secondly, I think this is one of the better amendments that we got on this here, because it does take away the crowd of smokers from the backyard backing onto the neighbours. Now, I think a bunch of smokers, and I'm not being disrespectful, but they are probably noisier than background noise. So with that noise towards the front, away from residential amenities, I think is a very, very smart move.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this amendment? If not, I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek. Those against? Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson. That amendment is carried. We now move to the substantive motion. At this stage, Councillor Tyson as mover and Councillor Adams as seconder have spoken. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment if I can.
Yes, Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that condition M be changed to a record of current patron numbers must be kept when numbers are over 200 or when special events are taking place, and produced at the request of the responsible authority, Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation or Victoria Police.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So the amendment is to amend condition 11M to read: a record of current patron numbers must be kept when numbers are over 200 or when special events are taking place, and produced at the request of the responsible authority, Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation or Victoria Police. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to this specific amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. I will. So the reason why I've put this one in is I believe that with the operating hours, they are quite extended, even though I know the amendment that was moved before. But I do think it is unfair for a business to have someone effectively on the door with a counter counting numbers in, counting numbers out, when there could be a very, very small handful coming in. It's an extra cost that it would add to the business. So what this is saying is that, right, if it's a larger event, over 200, where numbers do need to be kept track, or if we're getting anywhere near that 350, which obviously 200 is a lot less than that, they can start to keep the numbers. So it's just so that if people are going in at midday on a Saturday when it's raining and there's really next to no numbers, that it's not going to add that extra burden onto one of our small businesses. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to this specific amendment?
Just to say that I support the amendment. I think it's a good practical outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this amendment? If not, as there was no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That amendment is carried. We now return to the substantive motion. At this stage, Councillor Tyson has spoken as mover, Councillor Adams has spoken as seconder. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move one final amendment to the motion, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Isa.
And that's for condition 17 to read, An acoustic report to the satisfaction of the responsible authority must be submitted to and approved by the responsible authority. The acoustic report must be prepared by an acoustics consultant with suitable qualifications to the satisfaction of the responsible authority and must detail an appropriate acoustic fence to be erected in place of the existing fence located between the rear of the subject site and laneway, and also include details of appropriate acoustic treatment to the walls of the undercover seating area 2 in brackets Zone B and the shipping containers to ensure noise impacts are limited to the adjoining residential properties. When approved, the acoustic report will be endorsed and will form part of the permit. The provisions, recommendations and requirements of the endorsed acoustic report must be implemented and complied with to the satisfaction of the responsible authority.
So Councillor Isa is moving to amend condition 17 to read, and I'll read it out again as I have the others for the sake of those in the chambers and not in the chambers. An acoustic report to the satisfaction of the responsible authority must be submitted to and approved by the responsible authority. The acoustic report must be prepared by an acoustics consultant with suitable qualifications to the satisfaction of the responsible authority and must detail an appropriate acoustic fence to be erected in place of the existing fence located between the rear of the subject site and laneway, and also include details of appropriate acoustic treatment to the walls of the undercover seating area 2, Zone B, and the shipping containers to ensure noise impacts are limited to the adjoining residential properties. When approved, the acoustic report will be endorsed and will form part of this permit. The provisions, recommendations and requirements of the endorsed acoustic report must be implemented and complied with to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. Councillor Byrne, you're across the amendment. Excellent. Can I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. And look, after this final amendment, I won't then speak to the substantive motion, so I'll just make my remarks about that now, if I may, to try to keep things relatively economic. My intention in all of this is to try to make this work. The Ascot lot has a very strong following, and my own family has enjoyed food truck food there. I think some of us are disappointed that there have been fewer food trucks and more alcohol, but you know, that's the business's choice. Given that's the where the business is at, my goal is to make the business work such that the impacts on residential amenity are acceptable, reasonable, enforceable, and to make sure that...
Sorry, Councillor Isa, I hate to interrupt you.
I've just
been advised by governance that Councillor Tyson is unable to second as he is the mover of the original motion. So I will ask for another second. Sorry to interrupt, but we need to follow proper process. I need to ask if there is another seconder or a seconder for this specific amendment. Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, you may continue your debate. And
I think strictly I'm meant to speak only to the motion, only to the amendment as well, Mayor. I thought maybe I'd slipped there, so I will restrict myself to that. This particular amendment is just making sure that the acoustic treatment is also, and the acoustic assessment is also required for what I've described previously as the most sensitive interface on this site. And it is because of the material of the shed. The material that's used does not offer in itself insulation against the sound. The foam has served a purpose. However, if we're talking about 350 people, so an additional, so a doubling of the capacity on the site, we do need to be cognizant that those additional voices may well require some further treatment to that shed wall. And so this is just bringing that shed wall into the remit of that acoustic report quite specifically to ensure that everything that can be done that's reasonably doable to make sure that the amenity of residents is protected is part of this process.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to this specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the only point that I would also emphasise is that this condition, just in terms of how it differs from the officer's recommendation, is just to be very explicit again, picking up on the intent of improving the sound barrier between that back wall and the residential adjoining zone. It's just to be explicit that there will be a fence, but also the existing structure will also be, considered as part of it. So if the fence were to not cover that whole period, that whole structure as well, this condition now captures that entire boundary for being sound treated. So in that sense, and in order to protect the residential amenity, I'd be supportive of this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? If not, as there was no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Nation. That amendment is carried. Oh, sorry, Councillor Byrne. Thank you. Whew, all right, we now move back to the substantive motion.
The Mayor, I'd like to, now that I've become an expert on the lot in Ascot Vale, can I move a motion to be put?
Yes, you can. So a procedural motion has been moved by Councillor Sypek for closure of debate. So the motion be put. We cannot debate on a motion to be put. So this is taking a vote which will basically send the matter straight to the vote. So we are voting on accepting this procedural motion by Councillor Sypek, which basically escalates the matter straight to the vote with no further debate. I need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Byrne. So there is no debate allowed on a procedural motion for closure. Yes, no debate for a procedural motion for closure. So we are putting to the vote that this motion be put. If that is successful, we then will vote on the entire motion. If that's not successful, debate will continue. So all those in favour of the motion being put? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek. Those against? Councillor Nation, Councillor Isaac, Councillor Tyson. That is carried. So we're now voting on the substantive motion. There can be no further debate. So all those in favour of the substantive motion on the floor for 10.1. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. Those against? Councillor Isa. The motion is carried. Before we move to 10.2, if we could get Councillor Bedio back in the chambers. Councillors, we now move to item 10.2, Living Libraries Infrastructure Program and the Flemington Library Redevelopment. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Isa. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. Libraries are such an important and essential service within our municipality, and our libraries team does such a wonderful job delivering this service. The Flemington Library has a high usage rate and serves a relatively disadvantaged neighbourhood. The state government acknowledges that public libraries foster lifelong learning, facilitate free access to information and technology, and provide a safe, supported community space for local people to engage in a wide range of activities and enrich community life. The Flemington Library is in desperate need of an upgrade, and the benefits to our community will far outweigh the costs, and so I'm crossing fingers that we get this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, the Flemington Library is just a place that not only my kids but so many kids in the area have really benefited from. And I also particularly wanted to note that it has 12,000 members where there are only 8,000 residents in Flemington, and one of the reasons that the patronage is so high is, of course, it serves Kensington, and Kensington was part of Moonee Valley until 2008. And I did just want to put in a little note that maybe officers might want to follow up whether there is still an agreement in place that the City of Melbourne, I think, used to give the City of Moonee Valley some additional support with Flemington Library to ensure that because it's right on the boundary there, to ensure that there was due recognition of the fact that it actually serves the residents of the City of Melbourne. So that may be something that's worth exploring with respect to these particular works, which are much needed, and I'm very grateful that this particular grant opportunity is being taken up to serve Flemington Library's needs, the lift that is inadequate, the toilets that are inadequate, and also taking the opportunity to look at energy efficiency and what may be possible there. I was rather horrified to read in the report that the library is currently in breach of legislation. So I'd like, and I think there was potential for action to be taken with respect to discrimination, which rather horrifies. But if that's the impetus that's required to make sure this funding is secured, it's certainly an excellent case to be making with respect to us getting this grant through the Living Libraries infrastructure opportunities. Can I just note that I think there is a missing "the" in the resolution, so I'm not sure if that could be fixed without a specific motion to insert a "the." Just before the word "draft."
Look, it probably can't, but I don't think it's an issue if there is a missing "the." You finished speaking, Councillor Isa? Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3 is the Community Infrastructure Capital Works Projects. Now, councillors, under Governance Rules, Part 35, the Mayor may decide to put the motion and or debate and or vote in several parts. As this motion or this report and the recommendation has 3 distinct parts, I will put each part of the motion separately. So I'll call for a motion for Part A. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move the officer's recommendation for Part A, please.
Moved, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to just speak to Part A, please?
Thank you. Yes, so Part A, we are talking about the Chris Lane Memorial Baseball Field up in Strathmore Heights. I'm sure everyone's aware, but Chris was tragically killed 8 years ago in America, and he was a member of the Essendon Baseball Club and played at the Essendon Baseball Club. So this memorial in his honour has been on the cards for quite a number of years now. I would like to thank the hard work of President Tony Cornish and his committee at the Baseball Club for all the groundwork that they've done over the last number of years. This report is just about a change to the scope. We did receive some SRV funding, which has been fantastic, and lights have been donated as well. So there's and there's funding from Major League Baseball also, which is very important. So everyone's certainly on board, but it's certainly been a massive feat. And there's just a slight change that has had to occur over the last 12 months or so with SRV to enable the grant to actually come into effect, and so we can proceed with this project. So this money will certainly go toward producing something that is really going to be able to commemorate Chris. And I really, I've been on this journey pretty much the whole time. I've been on council for a while, and the Chris Lane Memorial Baseball field is certainly. We've certainly been able to try. We've been trying to achieve it for quite a while. So I'm certainly happy to be able to be here tonight to move the allocation of funding to be able to actually get it going. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, this started from a tragedy, but it'll end up being a wonderful project for the city of Moonee Valley and for the whole baseball community. The family of Chris Lane attended a ceremony there where we got funding from the state government as well for this project. So not only is the state government, council, SRV, we've even got the major league in the USA having attention on this. So when this becomes a reality, when this becomes an opening, this is going to be a world event in the city of Moonee Valley. And I fully support this project. And none of this could have happened if it wasn't for the great man Tony Cornish, the president of the Essendon Baseball Club, his whole committee, the whole community there, every single member, every parent, every grandparent, everyone has been backing this project. And we as a council, I hope will back this project in as well, because this is just an absolute win-win-win for all of us. And I look forward to you opening the Chris Lane Diamond, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this part of the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That is carried unanimously. I will now ask for a mover for Part B of the motion.
I'd like to
Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move a motion that reads, approve the allocation of an additional $672,000 of council funds to the Essendon Rowing Club Change Room Upgrade Project to be delivered during 2021/22 on the understanding that additional sources of funding will continue to be sought by both council and the Essendon Rowing Club, and subject to the execution of a new lease.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to the motion?
This particular project is about the upgrade of female change rooms to a club that was, for the most part of its first 100 years, a male club. It was commenced in 1880, and the female change rooms were not put in place until I think at least 100 years after that. So it would give me great pleasure to make sure that females at the Essendon Rowing Club are able to have adequate facilities in which to change and participate in what is an excellent sport, an excellent team sport, an excellent community sport, and that makes use of the beautiful Maribyrnong River, which we know is a very prized and appreciated and valued component of our community and municipality. This project has been on Council's books since May 2018. It was first put into the budget in 2018 as a project that received $100,000 from the state government, and Council at that point, so almost 3 years ago, committed to doing this project. And for whatever reason, Council has not yet done this project, and it's been carried over for 2 successive budgets, and now this will be the 3rd successive budget that it is being carried over, and it's lost money in that process. It has also cost more money in that process, and one of the reasons that it is costing more money is that it is incorporating disability access. Again, we have another facility in the municipality that's non-compliant with disability access, and we have another opportunity to make sure that our people in our community with mobility issues are encouraged and welcomed and included in our facilities. Rowing is an activity that can be taken on by people with mobility issues. It's an excellent activity for arm strength as well as leg strength. And to have a facility that where people need to undergo the indignity of being carried upstairs to the function room, whether they're elderly or whether they have lost use of their legs, this is an opportunity to remedy that and to make sure our facility is accessible to women and accessible to people with disabilities. And I would encourage colleagues to support this. With respect to the lease, I know that there's some ongoing discussions about the lease, and I know that this is a point of frustration for both Council and the club, and I can only just implore all parties to scrape away any residual ongoing frustrations and just deal with getting the lease signed. It's in the interests of the community and the interests of everyone just to I guess, be the adults in the room and get the things signed. We are operating under constraints legally with respect to the length of term of leases that did not exist in 1880, that didn't exist in 1978. They exist now. They constrain Council. We just have to get that bit done, and I'd really encourage all parties to pull out all stops, to work collegiately to get this project completed.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd just like to say that much like the baseball club, the rowing club is really a part of the fabric of our community. As Councillor Isa said, it's been around for just over 130 years now. And I think it's incredibly important that, given that they have a majority of female members these days as part of their club, the women are using change rooms that are about half the size of the male facilities, and I think it's really important that we address that. While there has been scope creep, I acknowledge in this, I think it's to our advantage in that the disability access requirements being met is also going to bring this club and its accessibility to the community into a far better state than currently. It's been, I think, over 20 years since the last capital works on this building. It shows, and I hope that this project will open up the club to more members of our community, more women, more people with a disability, more of the older members who aren't able to visit their club at the moment, and I really hope that my council colleagues will support.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to flag an amendment to this motion.
Move an amendment or
move an amendment? Sorry, move an amendment.
Yes. What is the amendment?
I'd like to append after the execution of a new lease, on the condition that a costed feasibility analysis of multiple options to meet project scope be presented to Council for consideration.
We might just get, be able to give those words to Daria to put on the screen. Okay, sorry, okay. So the amendment is to add After...
Not to that one,
No,
sorry.
that's...
On to Councillor Isers' motion.
That's... So after new lease, Daria, if you just, on the next one down, just go to the next one down, as in the next page.
No, that's right.
No, because you need to cut and paste the bit from the next motion down. So whoever's got the screen, go to the next motion down. Who's got the screen? Next one down. Like, go to the next page.
I think it's frozen.
Is it frozen?
Oh, that's the right one there. Yep.
So... No, go to the next one. Sorry. Yes. So, Councillor Bedio,
Yep.
on that screen,
So-
the additional part that we need to put onto the previous motion. Sorry.
Deletion of the...
No, so cut and paste from here and then put it back up on the original one. No, other way. Sorry. Councillor Bedio, can you please just go and help governance just to put the correct motion on the screen, please? Just need to cut and paste from the next one, sorry. Yes, that's correct. So that is your amendment added to the existing motion.
See the Acoustic Report regarding the multiple options.
So the motion that Councillor Bedio read, after it says new lease, governance, after it says new lease, on the condition... Is that how you would put it out, Councillor Bedio, just so we can make sure that...
In the condition that A, and remove... On the condition that a costed feasibility report, which is there on the second last line, so everything between that and the second last line can be deleted. Yeah.
So, councillors, just under meeting procedure 31, I'm going to adjourn the meeting to prepare a motion in writing. Thank you. No, not if it's from the chair.
You suspending?
Yeah, so I'm adjourning the meeting under section 31(1). The chair can adjourn a meeting to prepare a motion in writing. So the meeting is adjourned. Welcome back to the ordinary meeting of Moonee Valley City Council for the 9th of March 2021. We apologise for that brief delay, but I was required as chair to adjourn the meeting to prepare a motion in writing. So at the moment, councillors, we have item 10.3. It is a motion that has been split by the chair, so we're currently on part B. A motion has been moved by Councillor Isa, and we have just had an amendment from Councillor Bedio, which is on the screen. I will read it for the sake of those at home. So it's the existing motion with the additional at the end of new lease, and on the condition that a costed feasibility analysis of multiple options which meet the project scope be presented to Council for consideration. Councillors, do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio, do you wish to speak to your specific amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst I fully support the project and the need to make the space DDA compliant and to support the additional change rooms for females, the project has had quite a long history. It has grown considerably in cost. I'm not overly confident that the design of what is going forward for this project is necessarily going to be the best outcome. So I'm just wanting to make sure, by going through an additional feasibility analysis and looking at potential other options, to ensure that we're getting the best build, the best outcome for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek, do you wish to speak on this amendment?
Yep, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've been a part of this project right from the start when the original SRV funding came to council. And I was talking with then President, I forgot the name of the person, but the whole club has been behind this. This is a very, very important project within our municipality and also in the Moonee ward. The rowing club provide a service to Moonee Valley that we could never fund the amount of how much volunteers work is done there. This is a sensational project, but I want to do this right. I don't want this to be a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid approach. This needs to be proper feasibility, proper quantity surveying, and I would like to give our officers the best opportunity to provide the best project for the rowing club. I don't want to give them a second-rate project. And everyone's been in that situation where you've either built a house or you've done something and you've just forgotten that one or two things. I don't want this to happen here. I want this to be a diamond in our assets. I want this to be the best project that we can get for the dollars. And if that means the feasibility study comes back and it might cost us just that little bit more, I'd rather spend that little bit more and get a better outcome than to spend a little bit less and get a second-rate outcome, Mr Mayor. I think that pretty much says it all. I'm happy to support Councillor Bedio's alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? Councillor Isa.
Oh, look, I appreciate the intent is to make sure that council does its due diligence and looks at all options and makes a decision that's based on some good evidence. I'm just wondering how different that is than the information that's been presented to us with different options. We have before us option A, B and C, a partial, a modular. My understanding is that over the past 12 months, if not longer, there have been extensive discussions about whether a modular facility external to the building might work. There's then been discussion about whether the change rooms on the ground floor might work. There's been discussion about whether the project should or shouldn't proceed without the disability access. And it's been made clear that the disability access is something that council is really obligated to deal with. Now, if the intention is to make sure that the project itself is absolutely well planned, well designed, well executed, and that there's full transparency with the club and between all parties, that's something that I would expect any project that council undertakes to ensure that it meets those particular standards. I see this particular amendment as asking for something that council has already done, and council has already been doing over the past at least 12 to 18 months, looking at different options and deciding that the only way this can be done is to put the lift in and to make sure that the bathrooms are in accordance with all of the details that we have. This has all been, the members of the club have already seen this, spent hours looking at it, approved it. I feel we're going to inject this at this moment, right at the last minute here, when all this work's been done, is really not respecting the work that has been done by previous council officers, previous council laws on this.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I understand, the way that I understand the intent of this amendment is, I spoke of scope creep, in speaking to the motion, and I think the way I understand the benefit of an amendment like this would be to take one last chance, to take one last fresh look, and make sure that in that scope creep, we haven't overlooked any of the opportunities that may come from an upgrade like this, and in not trying to have a narrow focus on the original aims of the project, but to now see the opportunity in front of us. I'm very keen to see this progressed in the next budget, and I don't see that this is a danger to that, but I do see that it gives us that last, hopefully, not something that will cause any delays, which I don't believe to be the intent, but something that will just give us the confidence that we haven't overlooked anything.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? If not, I believe there was dissent. So, Councillor Bedio, if you would like to close.
Thank you, Mayor. And with respect to the comments from Councillor Isa, whilst I do acknowledge the work that's gone in by council officers, and I do respect and acknowledge the work that's been done by the rowing club. I went to meet Tim, the president, this morning to have a look at the facility. I completely commend the work that they do, and I have full faith that his team and the club are going to do some wonderful things with our community with an upgraded facility. But what I'm concerned about is the options that we were provided. So the options that we were look over, and I believe this is public knowledge, is it not? So there's one council funding of $672,000, $258,000, $442,000. Now, whilst there are slightly different scopes within those, they're significantly different figures. So now that we've selected, or now that we haven't yet, but now that we're looking at putting forward an option at the upper echelon, I'm just wanting to get that one extra look to say, is there anything else that we can get that's going to add value to the project? Now that council knows we're looking to spend this much money, when the project initially started at $250,000, are we covering all bases? Are we getting bang for buck? And so it's that last measure twice, cut once scenario before we go forward with the project. I don't want to delay the project anymore, but I don't want to see money go to waste.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. So we will put this specific amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Isa. That amendment is carried. and it becomes the substantive motion. So the substantive motion for Part B, as Councillor Isa has spoken as mover, Councillor Hodgson has spoken as seconder. Councillor Bedio, you were mid-address. Would you like to continue speaking on the substantive motion? Thank you.
Nothing further to add, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And once again, I reiterate, I think the club...
Sorry, Councillor Sypek. I think Councillor Isa had a clarification, but...
once again, I reiterate, I think the club will be much more happier if we just did that last final check to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And like I said before, if we get what we want for this value of this money, fantastic. But if it's going to cost us a little bit more to get a proper one-time project that will make everyone happy and will make all the club and the club members a lot more happier with greater change rooms, better change rooms, DDA compliant, I think that this is not going to delay the project. This will only enhance the project. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? No. If not, as there was no dissent, I'll put that to the vote. I don't deem there to be any dissent. Councillor Isa. Just a rule number.
Might be 10.2. No. It comes over after the amendment is carried, and it's a bullet point under that. 27.2. I don't want to say one thing quickly. So I believe the mover retains right of reply after amendments carried. I only wanted to say one thing quickly. And in fact, the mover of the amendment has a right of reply as well.
So the mover of the amendment.
The mover of the amendment has a
yes,
reply, and the original mover has a right of reply as well.
So the speaker of the amendment, we've already voted on the amendment, Councillor Isa. If you could just bear with me one moment to confirm this with governance. Councillor Isa, 31.2. The mover of the amendment will have a right of reply. 31.3. The mover of the original motion retains the right of reply to that motion. Governance, is that only if there has been dissent deemed on that as per...
The governance notes are silent on that, so...
Councillor Isa, if I will permit you to have a right of reply, so should you desire, and then we will follow that up with governance as to what proper procedure would be.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it is silent on whether dissent's necessary. I noticed that too. And I just wanted to say that, obviously I will support this motion with the amendment, albeit that I've spoken against the amendment. My key concern, and I appreciate the comments that were made by Councillor Bedio about the intention of improving to see if there's anything that does need to be added that potentially has been overlooked. My key concern is that if there's any delay, and I just really don't want to be here in 12 months' time having to carry it over from the budget again and having to vote again to deal with it. So I don't... there's no way we can sort of put a time limit in there. I don't think that's really possible. But I just really hope this doesn't cause delay.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll put that to the vote, the substantive motion. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That's carried unanimously. Part C of the split motion of 10.3 is item C. Can I please have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
I have got an alternative, Mayor, and it reads, receive a future report regarding the feasibility and options analysis for the Fairbairn Park South Multipurpose Pavilion prior to any concept, design or cost plans being developed.
Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Just confirming all councillors are aware of what the motion on the floor is. Or do we need to put some words on the screen? All councillors are across that. Councillor Byrne. Excellent. Councillor Sharp, would you like... Councillor Sharp, could you please reread your motion?
Receive a future report regarding the feasibility and options analysis for the Fairbairn Park South Multipurpose Pavilion prior to any concept, design or cost plans being developed.
Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to your motion?
I shall be quick, but basically there are a lot of things going on in this neck of the woods, particularly around issues between the driving range, tennis courts and everything else going on down there. I don't want to labour the point or make it a huge issue, but I just feel that we need a lot more information on this particular pavilion before we go any further, and we need the issues that surround this location to really be addressed, because we can't build something, and council has had a habit of this in the past of maybe not building the right thing in the right place, and it doesn't bode well for anybody. So I don't want to be put into a corner with this particular pavilion. I think we need a lot more information.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Fairbairn Park's a wonderful asset for the city of Moonee Valley, and we have a lot going on down there, and not only do we have netball, do we have golf, we have a lot of sports down there. We're going to even have maybe boating down there. So this is going to become quite a bit of a hub here. Now, we're not going to build a pavilion once again and just plonk it in a floodplain zone without thought to it. This needs a lot more thought. This needs a proper master plan for that whole area, and I think we do have a bit of a master plan. But once again, let's not just jump off the cliff straight away. Let's just take one step back. This is not a delay. This is just caution, and this is just like when your parents advise you when you're buying your first home, they give you a bit of advice. So let's just take a step back and let's do this properly.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
Yeah, look, I'll support the motion too, Councillor Sharp. I think we're all very anxious to see that the multiple and complex problems at Fairbairn are resolved, and make sure that any future build doesn't add to the problems, but in fact can perhaps be designed after we've actually solved the problems that currently exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Sharp, would you like a right of reply? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That is carried. Report 10.4 on the agenda is Council Plan Update Quarter 2. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move that the officer's recommendation be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this is the council plan update, which is absolutely critical work what we do as part of our statutory obligations as councillors and as a council. It makes some very interesting, critical reading for what council's reporting against its key performance indices, and I'd commend it.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I just would reiterate Councillor Tyson's words. I think the report shows that there's a lot that's been done. I think there's a few things noted in the officer's report that highlight the difficult year that we've had last year and how council has had to respond and adapt to the challenges that our community faced through the COVID pandemic. So it does make an interesting read, and I too support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
It's always a good little read to just catch up on a few things that have been happening around council or things that are coming up in the next quarter. And I noted with some excitement that there's going to be some community consultation on some pop-up cycling paths on Mount Road, that there's going to be some further consultation on flood planning, and that the power purchase agreement project that we voted on in December's progressing. That there's going to be some further work on the councillor input into open space priorities, and I hope that also includes obviously community input on that. I'm keen to know more about the phases of the digital transformation program that we're currently in the middle of, and looking forward to that IT project continuing to be well resourced. I did also notice that our cost of garbage has gone up 45%. And our recycling costs have obviously gone up because of the issues there. But it's a good little snapshot of all the different activities that council has been involved in over the past 6 months. 6 months.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Tyson, you wish to close debate? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. Sorry, I forgot the lag. Councillor Byrne as well. That is carried unanimously. Item 10.5 on tonight's agenda is response to notice of motion 2021-02. Sport requirements. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternative that I will read out.
Yes, please do.
The Council resolves to A, allocate up to $50,000 in 2021 for the installation of a 1.1 metre high, or the installation of 1.1 metre high fencing at Cross Keys Reserve along the western side of the pitch adjacent to the pavilion in consultation with the soccer club by 30th of June 2021. Install temporary fencing as an interim measure by 1st of April 2021. Point B, refer up to $350,000 to the 21-22 budget for the installation of a 3.5 metre high by 20 metre wide by 10 metre deep storage shed at the site of the demolished pavilion at Cross Keys Reserve in consultation with the soccer club. And C, continue discussions on storage options at Aberfeldy Park with the EMP Ladies Cricket Club, including obtaining quotes for a 3 metre high by 3.6 metre wide by 4 metre deep storage shed. Find a, end of sentence, new sentence, find a temporary solution in the form of a discreetly located and visually screened shipping container at natural ground level.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Thank you, Mayor, and I hope not to take all of my 5 minutes, but I have a little bit to say on this one, so I will try and be quick. So basically, the reasons behind my notice of motion is to help the clubs, and my desire is to fix relatively simple issues. Well, I thought were quite relatively minor and simple issues. So if I start with the issue of the shed for the ladies' cricket, the proposal that has been brought before us and investigated has literally been completely blown out of proportion. The ladies down there just need a shed that is pretty much the same size as the shed that is down there now. Hence, in my point C, I have put the height, width and depth of that shed because I went down and measured it myself yesterday to make sure that I was able to give the council officers absolute guidance in regards to what the cricket club need. We have a proposal here to provide OH&S equipment to help them with the issues down there with the moving of the equipment. I did speak to the President last week and she pretty much told me that, she categorically told me that she didn't believe that the equipment was viable or that it would actually solve the problem. So I'm sort of a bit aghast that, we would be recommending to just spend $10,000 on equipment that the club don't feel is even viable. So, to say I'm frustrated is probably an understatement. But aside from that, I understand that the Mayor and Councillor Sypek went down and had a look around and thought a shipping container could potentially help in the interim. And obviously I've added that into my motion because it's all about, I don't mind how we fix things, we just need to fix things and we just need to find solutions. So if that is a solution that will work, I'm certainly happy to look at that. In regards to the fencing and the shed at Cross Keys, the fence is a safety requirement. Down at Cross Keys, we've built a pavilion with spectator seating right adjacent to the pitch. Now, at every single sporting ground within our municipality where our pavilions are built adjacent to the pitch or the oval, we have a fence. So this motion is not reinventing the wheel. Fences are provided at every single one of our sporting grounds. It's certainly not something that's, a left of field requirement. But the fact remains is that it's needed for safety. So I've requested that, and I've fixed the height of that to be 1.1. In regards to the shed's pretty much required because we didn't build enough storage in the pavilion. Now, the pavilion at Cross Keys was always built for the soccer club, but we didn't seem to really engage in what they needed in regards to storage. And if you have a look down at Cross Keys now, there are goals everywhere, storage, seating everywhere because there's just no storage. So one of our pristine reserves looks really untidy and unloved because there just is no storage, and it's not the fault of the soccer club. It's because we really should have looked at our pavilion when we built it, and then we wouldn't be going through this issue, even talking about this issue now. Cross Keys is the gateway to Moreland. It's on two main roads. We need to make sure our parks look respectable and just enhance the beautiful areas that they are, rather than leaving them go to rack and ruin, which sometimes I think in this case we seem to do. So we just need to fix it. After COVID, we really need to be doing all we can to help our clubs. Every single one of our sporting clubs does more in one day than council can do in a year for our community. So I'm frustrated by the report that we have in front of us, and I hope that councillors can support my alternative. I'm frustrated for a number of reasons. I think if you look at the reports that we've endorsed tonight, we've endorsed double the amount of money for the baseball that we plan to 4 times the amount for the rowing club we planned to. There was an alternative here to endorse $10,000 for the cricket on something that they really don't think is going to work. But when it comes to soccer's just told, no, you can suck it up and you can just do what you've been doing all this time, and we're not going to be helping you. So my feeling is, and it's my personal opinion, that Moonee Valley Council has an unconscious bias against soccer within our municipality. So I really hope that we as a councillor group can change the culture and change whatever legacy seems to be hanging around. I don't know if it's an idea that soccer clubs don't cater for our locals, but every single one of us in every single ward has a soccer club, and I would invite you to ring every single president, see where they live. They are all locals, all the committees local, and they provide for our local kids, women and men.
Noting the time, Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, I did flag an extra bit of time at the start.
Yes, granted. Sorry, you're right.
I don't normally take up the 5 minutes,
you're right.
But so Buckley Ward, we have 3 soccer clubs. Roseville Ward, I think you've got 1. Moonee Ward have 2. So we really need to just change whatever legacy is here at the moment. If you look at the report too that's been attached to our report, we asked a third party to go down and provide information on a fence and a shed, but they seem to have also provided what they think the soccer club should particularly do around crowd control. Now, sorry, my voice is going. Now, I didn't. When none of us asked, my notice of motion didn't ask for what they thought about what a club should do about crowd control. The report was literally around what a fence or how a fence and a shed could be built, and for me, that's just proving my point that there is an unconscious bias against this kind of sport in our municipality. And I really hope that, I certainly will do my darndest to change it, and I certainly hope that our councillor group can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As much as I support this motion by Councillor Sharp, I'm not frustrated. I'm actually glad that this report has come to us, because this vindicates what my colleague Councillor Bedio and I have said in some previous items, where let's measure twice, cut once. Here we have 3 perfect examples of projects that we've done, and we've just missed those few minor details. Let's do our projects properly. I think as a council we've learnt from this, and this is a good example of learning going forward. So for future projects, I think this is a perfect example that shows that we are on the ball, and it shows that our officers are on the ball. And we as a whole council are working together as a team to provide our community with the best outcomes that we can have out of this. So I fully support what we're doing here. These are simple fixes. These are the fixes we should have picked up originally, but if we learn from this, we can only get better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Tyson.
Mayor, can I move that the motions be separated under Clause 34?
Councillor Tyson, you can. However, Clause 34, where a motion contains more than one part, a councillor may request the chair to put the motion to the vote in separate parts. So we can take the vote in separate parts, but as the motion has already been moved as a whole, we can't split the debate into parts. But I'm happy to adhere to that request as to split the vote into 3 parts because there are multiple parts to the motion. Councillor Tyson, did you want to speak on the motion?
The motion is separate?
We're speaking to the motion as a whole.
I have some concerns about the, large differences in projects and costs. I'd probably like to see some more information on points A and B, but perfectly happy with C, which is why I'd like the motion to be separated.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I just start by seeking a point of clarification on point B, and it's possibly through governance, just to understand the impact of the wording to refer up to $350,000 to the 21-22 budget for etc. I'm seeking clarification on whether that means to refer it to budget discussions, or exactly what is the impact of that wording as a council resolution.
I might direct that through the CEO in the first instance.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hodgson, can you please repeat your question?
Certainly. So I'm just wondering, in point B, the language which asks that council resolves to refer up to $350,000 in the 2021-22 budget for, and then the requested item. I just would like to understand what's the impact of that wording in terms of what it's asking council to do. Is that referring to budget discussions, or is that, as we were in the earlier, allocating money?
My understanding refers this to be considered as a part of the 21-22 budget, but not necessarily included, because that's a separate process. That will oblige during the budget briefings. We consider this.
Great.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, I will. Just to note, that certainly gives me a level of comfort, because I wouldn't like to commit funds of that amount without the due diligence project of the projects that we've been discussing, as Councillor Sypex mentioned in other agenda items that have come before us this evening. And I certainly can hear Councillor Sharp's frustrations with the processes, but think that it is worthy of further discussion, and the budget discussions that will be commencing shortly is a good place for that. So that gives me comfort with that interpretation. In terms of the other parts of the motion, I think they have a smaller, although not insignificant, budget allocation, but understanding the need there, as outlined by Councillor Sharp, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, if I may.
Yes, what is your amendment?
To Part A, to include the words at the very beginning to say, subject to stakeholder consultation. I know that it says consultation with soccer club afterwards, but I'm just aware that there are other park users, and I'd like to see the consultation broadened out. So maybe it might be better to say consultation with the soccer club and other stakeholders.
So could we your exact amendment is the insertion of?
In consultation with and other stakeholders, including park users, to broaden it out from just clubs, that there be some wider consultation.
So the amendment being moved by Councillor Isa is the addition of and other stakeholders, including park users, in Part A after the soccer club, after it states soccer club. So in consultation with the soccer club, and the amendment would be to include and other stakeholders, including park users, and then continue by 30th of June 2021. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to your specific amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, it's just really important to me that we make sure that no permanent fencing goes into our open spaces without all park users and stakeholders being consulted with. I note that Councillor Sharp referred to all parks in them. I don't want to misquote you, Councillor Sharp. So if I'm doing that, please let me know. That I think there was a reference to all parks in the municipality having fences adjacent to new pavilions, and it's not been the case in the Fairburn North Pavilion. That pavilion sits amongst open space. It's not been the case at Ormond Park. There's a temporary netting that goes up for matches, but it's not a permanent fixed structure that's in the ground there. And open space is obviously a community facility. It's not just for sport, it's for a whole range of activities. And I would be very, I just don't know that I could support it without that. The consultation was in the officer's recommendation, and I guess I'd assumed it would be included in an alternative, and so I would like to make sure that if we're putting permanent structures in open space, that we absolutely consult with community. It's one of the fears that I have about Debney Park Pavilion, and I had asked repeatedly around the sports ground being so proximate to the pavilion, and there has not been an answer about how that will be managed, and I very much fear that the assumption will be that the only way of managing that is to put a fence in there. And our open space in Flemington...
I was just remember we're talking about the consultation, just the amendment, not the...
Yeah, so the open space is so important that I would like to... Sorry, Mayor. I would like to make sure that consultation... with users be included if that... I don't want to see this same process replicated in Flemington is what I'm trying to say, sorry. So that if we build a pavilion in Flemington, there's suddenly a request from any club to put in some fencing, that's done without due consultation. I want this to be part of our process in our open space treatment.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to this specific amendment?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, Mayor, just noting on that, it does say in the report that because it is a fence going in, that the consultation would be to inform residents, not a full-blown consultation, and I would be happy with that. The fact of the matter is this is a safety issue, and it should have been put in when we built the pavilion. It's a safety matter. I don't want to have any kid get knocked in the head by a soccer ball because we haven't installed fencing, or a cricket ball knocking a kid's head off.
Councillor Sharp, just a reminder, we're just on the specific amendment. You will get a chance to close debate if it becomes substantive or if it doesn't.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no. It's all about consultation, and it does say in the report that our consultation would be regarding this to be informing community members. So I wouldn't be accepting of that alternative. I'm quite happy and confident with the wording in my Part A to make sure that we get this fix done and get it done properly, like it should have been in the first place.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this specific amendment? Councillor Isa, would you like to close debate?
I didn't realise it said inform. I'm remembering now that it did write that, which doesn't mean it means that the intention of is not quite captured by inform. As I'm a bit stuck, but I'll just leave it as is. I think it's certainly better to inform stakeholders and park users than to not inform them. So if we are only informing them, I'd certainly like to make sure that we're informing more than just the soccer club.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I am putting this specific amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. Those against? Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That amendment is lost. We now return to the substantive motion. Councillor Sharp has moved, Councillor Sypek has seconded and spoke. Councillor Hodgson, Isa and Tyson have spoken. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bedio.
Maybe more of a point of clarification, just around item C, where it says fund a temporary solution to store the roller and covers.
No, I didn't have that in my motion. Sorry. Fund a temporary solution.
Sorry, that's all right. So we'll just...
Point C was fund a temporary solution in the form of a discreetly located and visually screened shipping container at natural ground level.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
That's all I had in my motion.
Find or fund?
Fund.
Fund.
Yes.
And sorry, another point of clarification to that. Is there a limit to what that could be, or is that going into the, you know what I mean? Is that going into budget discussion, or is that for us to allocate that money? You know, how much is it going to cost?
So you're asking a point of clarification to the original mover or through the Mayor to the CEO in regards to how the process would follow?
Can I ask to the mover?
You can ask the
Can I ask, yeah, through you to the mover.
Councillor Bettio, this was a suggestion by my fellow councillors, so which I was happy to take on board. From what I was told, it was a minimal cost per week for a shipping container, temporary one, which is why I used the word fund, because it's minimal cost. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Thank you. No, that clarifies your point of clarification. Good. Councillor Bettio, did you wish to speak any further to this motion? Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Sharp, would you like to close debate?
I think I spoke enough last time around. I just hope that we can really focus on changing the culture that exists here and fixing our clubs up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. So, councillors, a reminder, Councillor Tyson, under Part 34 of our governance rules, has requested the Chair put the motion to the vote in separate parts, which I will proceed to. So, councillors, I am taking a vote now on Part A of the proposed motion. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. Those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. Part A is carried. Vote now taken on Part B of the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa. Those against? Councillor Tyson. Part B is carried. Part C, I will put to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. Part C is carried. Councillors, we now move to item 10.6, the Financial Performance Report, December 2020 and Year-End Forecast. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to summarise the report, a mid-year budget review was carried out through the months of October to December 2020 to determine the end-of-year forecasts and significant financial risks to Council. It is anticipated that Council will complete the year with a modest positive cash position compared to the adopted budget. The forecast position will continue to be monitored, considering any issues that may arise during the remainder of the year. In the current climate, COVID-19 remains a possible significant impact on Council's financial position. Council, through the formulation of the 2021 budget, has managed the COVID-19 impacts well. However, whilst COVID-19 remains in the community, allowance should be continued to be made of possible future impacts. I also just want to note that $250,000 will be allocated to fund planning and feasibility study for future capital works projects to create a pipeline of shovel-ready projects. Planning for future infrastructure projects is vital for the accurate scoping and costing of works and efficient on-time delivery. Improved forward planning is expected to result in a significant improvement in the delivery performance of the capital works program and attraction of significant external grant funding. Forward planning also will ensure that sufficient feasibility work and, in turn, thorough project briefs and business cases are prepared for future projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Bedio, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That's carried unanimously. Report 10.7, Domestic Animal Management Plan Update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
I move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, look, I would like to say a few things about this. The Domestic Animal Management Plan is due for review this year, and it's really important to me that this review take place with a good lead-in of consultation so that we can speak to both residents who are across issues of animal management, but also engage with some experts in the field and make sure that we look beyond Moonee Valley and look to some consultants beyond our internal staffing who may bring some extra thinking to this, because at the moment we currently have a contract with the Lost Dogs Home, and under that contract, although we are, and under the arrangements that are in place with respect to that, although we are rehousing 95% of dogs that are picked up, we are euthanasing 50% of the cats, and that's a lot of cats to be killing each year. And as a cat and dog owner, and I know obviously you're a dog owner, Mayor, you may have different views about cats, but I love them both. And both of our cats, two of my cats have come from the Lost Dogs Home. They obviously do manage to rehouse many cats, but to be killing 50% of the cats that are picked up says that we're doing something wrong. We can do some things better, whether it's to make microchipping more available to people, whether it's making desexing free to people who can't afford it otherwise. One of the things that also happens under our local laws is because we put a very tight limit on the number of cats that people can own and dogs, people don't register the cats that may go above that limit. And as soon as they're not registered, they're not microchipped, they're not trackable, they're not traceable, they're potentially not desexed, because it costs so much more, or so that there's a benefit, a discount for having your animals desexed, and it's cheaper to register them. So there are some mechanisms that we can put in place to help our residents, free microchipping days, accreditation to officers to microchip. There are things that we can do, and we can demand that whoever we have a contract with, the people who do pick up our lost cats and dogs, we can demand that there are KPIs around euthanasing that are well below what we currently tolerate and what we currently accept. We can look at some more data around, what types of cats, what types of dogs. How can we make sure that not just at the moment we compare well with other councils, yet we have had 10% reduction in animals reclaimed across the past year. I'd really like to see that our new plan identifies the figures that are currently put forward in this annual review and the areas where we can do better. And that we can make sure that we align with not just how other councils are doing, but align with our values, which are the safety and protection and assistance to our residents of animals. I also note, just very briefly, that the report doesn't necessarily give full scope of the social environmental impacts of some aspects of our plan, and it might be good to perhaps look at getting some fuller information there. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, our animal management plan has always been quite good, and it's always been generous to our residents. Most of our residents know that they can register their animals, and as Councillor Isa said, we do have free chipping days, which I think is a great initiative by this council. Not only do we have great management, but we also have a veterinary hospital at Essendon Fields, the Animal Referral Hospital, which is a 24-hour hospital, which is something that we as a council should be proud of. A hospital for animals in our electorate. And Mr Mayor, I truly believe that Moonee Valley is really good with animals, and not only just cats and dogs, but we have all different types of varieties. We have pigeons, we have rosellas, I've seen snakes, I've seen turtles. It's a variety. We even had Dane Swan a few years ago, if you remember, at Queen's Park. And Dane Swan was a registered Collingwood supporter as well too. So we love our pets in Moonee Valley, Mr Mayor, so I'm happy to support this motion.
Whew, thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Tough act to follow. Councillor Isa, do you wish to close debate? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That motion is carried unanimously. Report 10.8 is Notice of Motion and Petitions Update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. A seconder. Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to speak to the motion?
It's just purely procedural, Mayor, letting us know exactly where all our notice of motions are up to and where the petitions, the status of the petitions as well.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Hodgson, wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to add.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to remind people that I did have a notice of motion back last year about introducing smaller green waste bins. So this is a good example. This is a good time to let our community know through our live streaming that small green waste bins are coming for smaller houses or unit apartments where you have food scraps or where you have a small bit of land to cut grass, but you just don't know where to put it, and it usually goes in the landfill. With a smaller green waste bin, we're going to capture that extra green waste to go to the right place for the right waste and not into landfill. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Sharp, do you wish to close? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. That's carried unanimously. Councillors, Report 10.9 is attendance at 2021 ALGA National General Assembly of Local Government. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to say, I think it's a really wonderful opportunity afforded to our councillor group to attend the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly in Canberra. I look forward to hearing the report that we will get back to council from those councillors attending.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, do you wish to speak to this motion? Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
Only to note that the deadline for motions is the 26th of March, which was the date that I was trying to think of the other day. So if we do have any motions, we need to get onto that.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Otherwise, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Byrne, Adams, Bedio, Hodgson, Nation, Isa, Sharp, Sypek and Tyson. That's carried unanimously. That concludes our council reports. We move to item 11, notices of motion, and we have no notice of motions on the agenda tonight. Item 12 is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business? There being none, we move to item 13, confidential reports, and there are no confidential reports. So that concludes the business on tonight's agenda. A big thanks to everyone watching online on the live stream, and I now declare this meeting closed. Good night.